WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. I want to thank you for being with us today. We're coming to you from Star Communications, Channel 16. We're airing Tuesday each and every week. It's simulcast on WCLN Radio. There's a summation in the Sampson Weekly newspaper. We also remind you to please continue to email us at weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. I want to welcome our guests today. Two folks that I've known for some time, Brian Smith and Melanie Smith. Both born and raised right here in Sampson County. Both have graduate degrees in different areas. East Carolina University for you, Brian. A degree in criminal justice, North Carolina State University. You attended that University Administrative Officers Management School there, which is a highly recognized school nationally, by the way. Former member of the Clinton Police Department. Go Clinton PD. Also, you were promoted. This is kind of an important move here. You were promoted to sergeant with the North Carolina Highway Patrol in 2019. Served Surrey, Duplin, Sampson, and Cumberland counties. You are now first sergeant for the Highway Patrol in Clinton, North Carolina. Melanie, you're an important part of this union here. You make the education piece whole because you were born here. You also attended Midway High School, University at Chapel in Wilmington, graduate and undergraduate degrees. You taught school, 2016, assistant principal. You have served in Pender County, Union Elementary in Sampson County, and presently, this past year, you were the principal at Plainview Elementary School this past year, and your son, Robert, is taking off to college at ECU with honors in the fall. Mm-hmm. Wow, what a track record. Did I mention y'all were married? Well, let me go ahead and get that out of the way. So we have two unique situations, in my opinion, two highly recognized public servants. Both of you live in the same household. Education, Melanie, is your banner. That's what you do. That's what you do not only for why you do it. I'm going to ask you that question in a minute. Brian, you look at making sure that we're safe, that we're able even to make it to school. And those two elements for me, and I'm sure our listening and viewing audience, is intriguing. So help us understand first, Melanie, at what point in time and what caused you to say, education is the thing that I want to do with my life? Because we all recognize that whatever your profession is, whether you actually accept it or not, you're going to spend 35, probably maybe 75% of your life doing that job.
Right.
And for teachers and Brian, for folks in your profession, it could be, I would guess, 80, 90%. Because the expectation also is on your shoulders when you're not there. Why education?
Growing up, my mother was a teacher assistant and a bus driver, and she would come home and tell stories about how excited she was when a child learned to write their name or just something great that happened at school. And I've always enjoyed school myself. I enjoy learning, and I even enjoyed my graduate work, even though sometimes it was overwhelming. So it was just a natural choice for me, and I attended UNC Wilmington, and they have a great school of education. So I feel like I got a really good background with my student teaching, and things just went from there.
Brian, same question. You, at some point in time, you decided some time ago, because you were assistant dispatcher, part-time dispatcher with the county here, with the police department. Somehow you were gravitating to that way before you reached the level and the status you're in now.
Yeah, I think it goes back as I was growing up. As you know, my father was a volunteer fireman. Mm-hmm. So that gave me the opportunity to go to collision scenes and see how he helped people, and the fire department helped people. My grandfather on the wrecker service, so I was able to go to on stuff with him on through college. And I was thinking about it today, coming here. I had I had an opportunity that a lot of people do not have. One, I enjoyed going with my father to fire calls, but it also was a learning experience for me because I saw the bad in it at an early age. I can remember the first time I went to a fatal collision and what it looked like, 9 or 10 years old, and seeing that. And it always made me respect a car, respect the law. And looking back, not only that, I had 2 people growing up that were very dear to me in law enforcement. Paul Tippett, Charles Adams, very good role models, church people, as you can tell, but very influential in my life to make that move.
Yes, I'm so glad you mentioned both of those names because I knew those people very well. Paul Tippett, needless to say, way back years ago, not only was he an outstanding protector of the peace, but he was one of those people that anybody could look at, and it didn't take you but a moment to understand if you wanted to model, there was one you needed to follow. Right. And of course, Charles Adams with the Wildlife Commission was another person that was, he would always reach out to help, no matter what it was. Right. He would always reach out to help. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and it's such a personal thing too.
Yeah, it's personal, and I saw them that they were in law enforcement, but I saw them that they were human. They were human beings. Absolutely. And that's what I respected the most.
Melanie, Brian just mentioned something I think is critically important when you think about it, is the humanization of a position that you're in. These positions are people that have families, that live, that breathe, that do things just like everybody else. But you put yourself in this role for the reason you talked about a while ago, but you're there now. Has the expectation of your job as an educator changed over the past 10, 15 years? And if so, how have you seen that change?
It's changed in 2 different ways, I believe. One is parents, for being a public educator, which I've always been, parents have a choice now. So you have to do a better job of promoting your school and making sure that families know what you can provide for their child. And I would say the second way it's changed is in our society there's been somewhat of a breakdown of the family unit, and many things that were in the past when I grew up taught in the home may not necessarily be so. So we've had to really, and this is going to be very critical next year, we've really had to focus on teaching behavior, teaching procedures. Next year, even more important with the behavior, meeting a child's social emotional needs, because this pandemic has been, something traumatic, especially for a young child, since I deal with young children. And just not as much, I feel great support at my school, but that's not always the case for every educator. Sometimes it's almost like people are against us rather than for us and supporting us. So it's definitely changed in 28 years.
Brian, what Melanie was just talking about, it's also reflected in the larger public. And it doesn't have as much to do with respect as it does expectation. Does the expectation of what people expect of you, is it somehow flawed in the sense of what they think you're going to do rather than what actually you're there to do?
I think so. Sometimes people may be misled. Sometimes people expect a whole lot more. 20 years ago when I started, in police work, it was basic police work. You go answer a call, somebody shoplifting, somebody broke in a house, go investigate a collision, and that kind of thing. Now it's gone to, even we as troopers, we stop by and check on schools because people expect law enforcement presence there, or we may go to a ball game, or they expect you to try to unlock their car door, or there's a whole lot more that people expect of us at times, and regardless of what agency you work for.
Absolutely.
And depending on what agency you work for, you may or may not have the foundation or the training, because it's just something you just don't do on a daily basis.
That's the kind of thing I think, Melanie, that there's this kind of a sense of crossover between the classroom and the public world that oftentimes you see that play out. And obviously sometimes with classrooms and vehicles on the road in high schools where sometimes I'll go by a high school and I'll look, and of course I know even back during my day there was some folks drove to school. But now it's like the parking lot is packed with cars, which begs the question sometimes at high schools, do we need buses there? Obviously we got to have buses, but it's like everybody seems to be driving now, Brian. So you're taking what may or may not occur. Hopefully they had a good situation with their teacher when they left school. If not, they may have decided to take it out on their car or the road, and then all of a sudden it transcends to the larger community.
Right.
So how do you as a principal sometimes look at your children, or do you sometimes look at children in the classroom, as one teacher told me a couple of years ago when I asked this question, you look at the children in the classroom, what do you observe? And this particular teacher, in fact she was Teacher of the Year, she said, I see what happened the night before.
That's exactly
whoa,
right.
that was, to me that was a little bit chilling at the moment to hear that, because then it struck me, she explained what she was talking about. And I'd like to kind of get into that if it's okay, we can come back from break and maybe process that for folks, because whether parents maybe realize it or not, you do see in that child's face, in that classroom. I've been in education a large portion of my life, but not in public education, which is a unique field. I've always said it takes special people in many ways. We're going to take our first break. We're going to come back. We're going to address some of these issues. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with two folks that know a little bit about education, know quite a bit about public behavior and individual behavior. Brian and Melanie Smith. We'll be back in a moment. Call a friend and stay tuned. You're going to want to hear the rest of this show and the commentary. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on air. I'm J.W. Simmons. I'm here with the First Sergeant with the Highway Patrol in Clinton, Brian Smith, Principal right here in Sampson County, Melanie Smith, and also former teacher. I guess you could be a principal and teacher both, right, Melanie?
Yes.
So the reality is you guys literally live together and you talk about things, I'm sure, well I hope you do, and it all deals somehow with behavior, does it not?
Right.
So as we went to break, Melanie, we were talking about the idea that teachers can often look at their students in their classroom and discover from facial expressions, how they're dressed, what happened the night before, what environment they come from.
Right.
What does that do, and how do you not only appreciate that, but what can you do about that, and what do you do with that? How does that help you in the teaching world?
Well, you just have to, all teachers know that relationships are very important, and you just have to get to know your students, and you just have to meet them wherever they are, because some students come to you with supportive home environment, they have everything they need, ready to learn, and some don't. So teachers do a very good job of meeting a child where they are and helping them to grow. And we often say that sometimes a teacher is the only positive person in a child's life for the day, the week. Sometimes you never know what's going on at home, but if there are problems in the home, it always transfers over into school one way or the other. Maybe not every single day, but every child, as an assistant principal, I dealt with behavior a lot, and every child I've ever dealt with that had behavior issues, there was usually some reason behind it, some reason that channeled back to the home, or some event in their past that caused them to act out. And So you just have to have good relationships with the families, because the more support you have from home, the better the child's going to do. And two, children, when we were growing up, we didn't have the end of grade test. We didn't have the pressure that they have beginning in 3rd grade, and sometimes that's a lot for a child to deal with as well.
The Director of Public Instruction, Mark Johnson, I mean, he's there for now. I guess he probably is not going to be there at some point in time, but he's talked about everything from technology to end of grade testing and those kinds of things. Do you see things that, from your perspective and position, and I'm not trying to put you on the line here, but you may have a unique situation that could be done to improve the capability and capacity of teachers to better be able to transfer that information that they're trying to move to the classroom?
I believe in assessments. I think it's important to assess your students. I just think we've gone a little overboard with it, putting too much emphasis on assessments or giving too many assessments. Sometimes teachers feel, and this is the way I felt sometimes in the classroom, they feel that they're only preparing for a test, and I wish that they didn't always feel that way. I wish that just some of the pressure being tied in with bonuses, and it gets very competitive. And two, it's how you perform is always, it's out there. You know the grade of your school is going to be published. The media is going to discuss it. That you're going to even know it within the county who did well and who didn't. So that adds pressure as well. I'm not saying we don't need to assess children and make sure they grow, but it's just a lot of pressure on a teacher and a child sometimes.
A question for either one of you. Do you feel like we're at a place in our society, in our world, that public expectation has gone beyond the ability for public servants to fulfill some of the expectations out there?
I think to a certain point, yes. And I don't think at times that's not intentional. I think it's maybe the lack of communication we give to people as professionals. Mm-hmm. They expect you to have all the answers all the time, and that maybe, I don't know what that comes from. Technology maybe, because you think back 20 years ago, 22 years ago is when I came on. We did everything by hand.
That's correct.
We had to call the comm center to get somebody's information on their driver's license. Now it's a stroke of a key. I can do it on my cell phone. So everybody, I think in today's time, just trust Google on everything, or YouTube. And I think when anybody from our profession, they think, well, this is the problem, y'all should be able to fix it. Yeah. And we can't always fix the problem.
Do you think that transcends to the classroom and reverse? I mean, you see with students, sometimes they look at the teacher, or maybe the teacher calls the principal in to discuss something with a child, and do you hear similar sense of that same thing? Why don't you should be in my shoes kind of thing, and you would understand why I'm doing this. So why don't you go fix it? But right. You have so much limitation.
Right, and many times in the media, in Brian's case and with my case, the media wants to cover the stories that are going to get shock or that are going to get viewers, and that's not always the happy story. They're not going to come and cover how a child grew and just made leaps and bounds, within a month because of a wonderful teacher. You just don't see that story very often. I see it every day. He sees good things in law enforcement every day. But sometimes people judge both our careers based on the bad examples that they see in the media and on social media. And two, social media in my case, especially for older students, can translate into things that happened on social media the night before can sometimes roll over into the classroom the next day.
Yeah, and we've had cases, I think, on social media that's resulted in suicides and all kinds of things in children's lives that, I mean, their brains are just developing and they can't handle that bombardment. Part of it is shaming. I've seen there's been a number of articles about shaming on the social media networks and how it just really just destroys kids and they can't help it.
Right.
Yeah, and on the expectation side of society, you know, we live in a selfish world. We all can be selfish at times. We think our situation is the most important right now. You know, and they just don't realize sometimes the resources we have. It can be something simple as a speeding complaint on a particular road. You know, we get those all the time. Why can't y'all go sit out here, or want you out here? And you know, we're sitting here with limited resources, 13 men where we're full, 4 or 5 working within a 24-hour period. The other 4 or 5 have to be off, and we have over like 960 square miles we have to cover. Yes, we want to go work that road. We want to stop them people for speeding. But you know, we have people wrecking over here on this side of the county, or we have, of the 5 working, we have 2 in training. So we really only have 3 men out here. So I think that sometimes the selfishness and the people just don't realize how many resources it takes to do law enforcement, even as teachers. I mean, it's a whole lot easier to teach 10 kids or children than it is 25 or 30 in a classroom. And I think that has a lot to do with it.
So Melanie, you see sometimes, and what I'm hearing Brian saying is that oftentimes you're seen as a problem solver. So no matter what my problem is, I'm going to bring it to you. You're a public servant, by the way, so I want you to solve my problem.
Yeah.
Is that's part of that, Brian, expectation piece that kind of gets out of hand?
Or can be unrealistic, not necessarily intentional,
right,
but just not, they don't understand the whole concept, everybody, you know, you're one of how many hundreds of people, thousands of people traveling up and down the road, or right this second. And what I try to stress to my men here is, unfortunately in our world, in my world, man, 99% of the time when we can't come in contact with you, it's usually for something bad. Not that you violated the law, you don't have your seatbelt on, you don't speed, or maybe you've had a bad day, you've got a flat tire, you ran out of gas. Yeah. I mean, and we're there to help. So what I've tried to tell these the troopers here is, hey, continue to be professional. Man, try to make that bad day they're having good. Yes, you may have to do some type of enforcement action, but try to educate the people too. It's not like we come out saying, hey, I want to carry 10 people to jail today. I mean, that's not the perfect world. We'd carry nobody to jail, write nobody a ticket. But just try to make that encounter somewhat positive, on a positive note.
Your role as an educator with children, what do you feel like your role is in responding to that, to educate people, kids in the classroom? Here's what these folks are. And I say that with a little bit of knowledge. I know I saw in the media, you were talking about media, I saw in the media where I believe it was your school, there was this, looked like to me, a great moment where kids got to actually meet folks in uniform and kind of sense the personal piece, a relationship. I thought that was outstanding, but all of a sudden it was there, and like a flicker, it was gone. We got about 60 seconds before we got to go to break, and we'll let you start that, but we can come back afterwards. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I tried when I was in Pender County, Union Elementary, and at Plainview, I tried to get not just law enforcement in, but all kinds of community helpers. And allow kids to see what they do and learn about what they do, and especially see law enforcement as a positive role model. He brought in guys at Plainview, and they helped us with what we call a PBIS celebration, which is a reward for good behavior. So
we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to follow up on that part of it, and Brian, I want to kind of go back to you to get, and I think you've done a real good job with that, getting folks a sense of who you are and what you do. So we'll be back on that. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Brian and Melanie Smith, both people that are dedicated public service, both people that are working for you. We'll be back in a moment. Call a friend.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. We're talking with Brian and Melanie Smith. Brian is First Sergeant with the North Carolina Highway Patrol right here in Clinton, North Carolina. Melanie is a principal at Plainview Elementary School, been a classroom teacher, literally kind of done it all in the education world. Brian, I want to spin to you for a moment. And this is a quote from Secretary Hooks, who is Secretary of the Department of Public Safety. And this is a statement he made at the most recent Highway Patrol graduation, by the way. And he just kind of clued in for me. Secretary Hooks said to the new troopers, he said, "So as you face the challenges of law enforcement, I am always reminded we are blessed with the opportunity to do some good in this world." That's pretty visceral if you think about it, if you put it in context with what we're just talking about. It also reminds me of a quote and I could call the person's name, that I interviewed several years ago that had a very similar uniform on that you did. And I asked him, I said, what do you want people to do? What do you want people to expect when they look up and they see something blue in their rearview mirror and they pull over? What do you want them to do? And the first thing he said, we want to see hands. And I said, what are you talking about? And he was talking about his safety and the safety of that interaction. So that's kind of what we're talking about now, is this idea of expectation and fulfilling that expectation, but false or desensitized expectation destroys the relationship, and we'll take it, whichever one wants to take on that.
Well, I think so, and I think that's part of educating. Again, we have to do that in schools. We have to do that as professional law enforcement people. You know, when we leave of a morning or an afternoon, our thought is we want to come back home. And a good quote there from whoever it was,
Secretary Hooks,
about the hands thing.
Yeah.
You know,
the other trooper.
Yeah, the other trooper. You know, we're not out here to hurt nobody. We don't want to hurt nobody. We want, again, we want to take a bad situation and make it better, whether that's a traffic stop or whatever the encounter is. And usually that's where law enforcement officers get hurt, with their hands. If people can just, you know, show their hands, relax. I know you get nervous. I've been stopped before, you know, before I was in law enforcement. You get nervous. I still get nervous with on my personal car with somebody behind me now. But the fact is, to get to a safe place that you feel safe, show your hands, just comply. There's a time and a place to argue. It's not beside the road. That's not a safe environment for no one.
You're not going to have court there.
Right. That's what a court date. That's what a court date's for. That's why we have a process, and we have to trust the process. Is the process perfect? No process is perfect. No human's perfect. But for everybody's safety, beside the road is not the time to engage in that. That's for day in court.
Melanie, I want to transfer just that thought, this conversation I'm just going to lay in front of you as we're talking about this. Is there a time and moment that, and you've already started that process, it sounds like, because you're introducing kids to understand what these public servants do in various aspects. They're starting to learn that. Do we need to focus early in the education process and maybe even elementary school to introduce children to what I recall when I was growing up is, if I needed help, I'd go find somebody in a uniform.
Right.
Have we missed the moment?
I think we've missed that message a little bit, or maybe not missed it, because we do teach that in school, especially in kindergarten and first grade. But again, the media bombards them with negative images of law enforcement, of any. Our society in general just doesn't like being told what to do, doesn't like authority. And when I'm dealing with a child or even a parent and they have their demands and their expectations, I try to make them see the bigger picture, because in both of our positions we can't just make a decision that's going to make one person happy. And sometimes the decision we make doesn't necessarily make anybody happy. But in my situation, I have to do what's best for the child and keep the child's needs in mind. And I have to consider what the parent wants, what's best for the child, and sometimes mediate between the parent and the teacher in a negative situation. And when I'm dealing with the child, talking about behavior, I try to bring in examples of, let's talk about this calmly. Let's, what's bothering you? Can you tell me what, get them to articulate what their problem is rather than reacting in a violent or an angry way, or, sometimes giving them time to cool off and things like that.
Do you guys feel like that over the past few years, maybe 10 years, maybe longer, there seems to be this continued thing that rather than seek solutions, we first seek to take sides. And the solution is so critically important rather than the side. I mean,
Right.
I'm just thinking, I guess, trying to think logically, which is probably hard for me, but thinking logically, it just seems to me that's where we're at.
Well, I think people, no matter what the topic is, they take a side, and emotions get in the way of critical thinking or rational thinking. And we have to take that, somehow we have to take that emotion out so we can sit down and try to meet in the middle for whatever the problem is. And it goes back to, in my line of work, we have to reiterate that we're human beings. I mean, yeah, we're, sometimes people think we're the, bulletproof, maybe not a good cliche, but we're human beings. I mean, when we go to a bad situation, if I go to a fatal collision, somebody's killed, and it's a child, all I can think about is, I have one of those at home.
Yeah.
How's this parent going?
And you carry that with you.
And I carry that with me at home. So you have to deal with that. So I think it goes back for our profession, my profession. I think we have to do a little better job, or much better job at that, at getting into the schools, because some things that maybe the home's missing. The day we went to, she asked me to go carry some guys up there to Plainview Elementary, and at first I thought, there's no way in the world these guys will do it. No, they're too big. You're thinking a macho, the macho type. And then I was like, well, I live with this lady, so I can't tell her no.
That's right. That's a smart move on your part.
I've got to make it work.
Yeah.
So, but I tell you what, once we got it, I first told them, some of them were like, well, okay, if you say so. But I guarantee if you went to the 5 or 6 troopers that went there, they enjoyed it. And some things I've seen on both sides from our guys that went, and I talk about her favorite trooper here, but Trooper Batista, he's bilingual.
Yeah.
So we start to talk to the group of students, and he sees some Hispanic students there, and he just starts speaking in Spanish. Boom, and that's right. The expression on their face is just priceless.
Yeah.
That's somebody that they can relate to in this uniform.
Yeah.
Hey, he's a human being just like us.
Yeah.
And I think we have to do more of that. I think the police department here has done that at times, with community events, and the sheriff's department too. We have to get out there. Hey, we're human. We all need to get along. We need to follow the rule of law. Sometimes people stump their toe.
Sure.
Intentionally or unintentionally, and we just have to deal with that in a professional way at the time, and then let the court system run it out, work it out in the end.
Well said, well said, Melanie. Is the solution to some of these kinds of things that we're tossing out here, does it come better from your level as a principal of a school or a teacher? Do we often sit back and wait for the next state committee to be formed to give us, quote, directives or protocols? Is it more important sometimes to listen to the outside the circle rather than in the middle of the circle?
I think you just have to find a good balance, because inviting them in,
It's a great idea. I remember seeing the pictures, and you're right. The troopers' faces had as big a grins on them as the children's.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
But just making sure that the kids felt comfortable with that, and they did. And another thing that will definitely improve this situation is Sampson County recently, in the past couple of years, has added more and more resource officers. I think it's good for them to see a resource officer in the school to help them feel safe. And every resource officer I've ever dealt with was there to support the kids, and kids loved them, you know, just flocked to them in some cases for positive attention. So that's a step in the right direction as well. But again, that goes back to, like Brian was saying, resources and funding. You don't always have the funding to do that.
Do you see sometime in the future there might be or may be a specific curriculum set aside for that purpose? Or is that even possible? I don't know. I'm just tossing.
I do. I think that will. I think that will definitely be a necessity. Maybe not at the elementary level, but definitely middle school and high school. You already have it at the elementary level when you talk about community helpers, not just policemen, but firemen, mailmen. But I think you need to revisit it as children get older, and see maybe see law enforcement in a different light.
And then I think
some of that goes back not only to resources, but something she said earlier. The way school's structured right now, they concentrate so much on an exam, that last exam, that they don't have time to give you 10 or 15 minutes other than a driver's education class to talk to them about the rule of law, talk to them about doing safety. So
help develop those social skills and interaction skills.
And that's not just in this area. You know, there's lots of, and it goes back to what I was saying about social emotional learning. We've been so focused and so driven with academics, and academics are definitely important, but we've got to bring in some of these other things as well.
We're going to be back in a minute. We'll take another break, ladies and gentlemen. Stay tuned. We're talking about things that affect your life each and every day. We'll be back in a moment.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on the air. Coming up on our last segment here on the show, I want to remind you, you can reach us at weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Always look forward to hearing from you. If you decide to drop us a card, send it to Post Office Box 1482, Clinton, North Carolina. That's 28328. Also appreciate your cards and comments coming in as well. We're talking with Sergeant Brian Smith and Melanie Smith. Sergeant Brian Smith is First Sergeant, North Carolina Highway Patrol right here in Clinton. Melanie is principal up at Plainview Middle School.
Elementary.
Elementary school. And, well, that's where you are now, but with the school system, you may be principal somewhere else before we even know it, right? So it's kind of like the Highway Patrol. Sometimes you get moved, but hopefully you'll stay with us. But Brian, the important thing for you, though, this is kind of home turf for you.
Yeah, it's
and that's a great thing.
It's a great thing to be back home. You know, we were going home the other day, and I said, you know, I really am lucky. Not many people say they came back home to be the first sergeant.
Absolutely.
She quickly reminded me it wasn't luck. I was just blessed.
We would say to you, we enjoy watching the fruits of your labor, and any support we've given you go forward. That's a blessing.
Sampson County has always been home. The people here are good, no matter what you see on the news. And they love law enforcement. We want to continue that trend.
Yeah.
So I want to start with you. You know, we off air a while ago, we were talking a little bit about surveys, and a lot of surveys is going on now, and asking people questions and different. Sometimes I guess people get overwhelmed with surveys. But when it comes to education, or Brian, even in the work you do, both of you as public servants, it's a way that you get feedback, and you're looking for what you need to do to improve.
Right.
You know, as public servants, that's what you've done for years in your life. Talk to us about some of those surveys and what you expect from the parents and from the general population.
Well, I know the parents are probably very nervous about next year. Right now, Sampson County Schools and every school district across North Carolina is trying to gather data so that we can better plan for next year. And sometimes we get annoyed with the calls or the text or the promotions on social media. But right now it is just critical that we get that information so that we can plan bus routes and schedules and have a plan for if we end up going to remote learning because of the COVID crisis. So I hope that parents will submit that so we can move forward. And it just goes back to that's data, and data drives everything I do. Testing data, I looked towards the end of the year of teacher working conditions data, and sat down with every section and said, what are some things I can do better to improve this area, or wow, we really did a great job in this area, let's continue. So I hope that parents will do that, because if we get that data, we will use that and have a good plan in place for getting the kids to school as much as possible and trying to recoup from being out last year.
And I think you hit a very key point there, and wish we had a lot more time to put on it. But you really don't know what to expect as a result of COVID-19. And now it's almost like we're behind the curve to some degree with at-home learning. There's a lot of tests being gone out, and I recall the last conversation I had with Dr. Bracey. Folks don't realize how much additional workload that put on public educators to make sure all that stuff happened.
Right, it did. I had teachers, and I felt the same way. You almost felt during the closure that you literally could not leave your computer, because I was so afraid that one of them would reach out to me and need me, and I would need to give them an immediate response. A lot of times they were communicating with a parent and I needed to give an answer, and same thing with them. They were having Zoom meetings at night and messages on Class Dojo and any platform that they could use to connect with students. And I know they worked a lot more than they did during a regular school day, just for that reason. We hope to have a better plan in place for this coming year. I think we've learned some things from the closure and want to move forward, but again, we need their input, we need their information.
Well, I think the thing is that response is critical. Same thing with the 2020 census. We're encouraging people to participate in that, because that also gives us the analytics as to what we get or we don't get from government funding and those kinds of things. Brian, I want to turn to you very quickly though and mention this is just a little booklet here, but it's more than a little booklet. It's a pretty big deal. 2019 marked the 90th year of the history of the North Carolina Highway Patrol in this state. In a leadership role, not only in North Carolina, but nationally. And as I have had conversations with Colonel Glenn McNeil, we're pretty proud of that, and I think all the citizens should be, because that's who you work for.
Right, yeah. We have to remind ourselves every day we work for the people of North Carolina. We're here to serve. That's what we signed up for. And that's what we try to do each and every day. For 90 years we've done it. Sometimes we do fall short, but we correct ourselves quickly and continue that. And it's a pleasure to work for an agency that's been around 90 years, a professional agency. And that is, I always tell people, I teach BLET and I do radar and stuff, so I have people going to other agencies and work for other agencies. So I'm always recruiting for the Highway Patrol. Right now we need about 150 troopers. So if anyone's interested, they need to contact me at the office. But I always tell them every law enforcement agency is perfect. The police department, we need police officers, we need sheriff's deputies. I started at the police department and I enjoyed those days, and I learned a lot during them days, and I still respect the things them guys and girls do, because they're just as essential to the community and to public safety as the Highway Patrol.
I guess you would agree it's still an honorable position. It's something that folks could look at with pride?
With pride. It takes, like you said, it takes a special person to do it. You're not going to always get a pat on the back, but I tell people every day, they'll ask me, I don't see how you do that job. Well, I don't see how nurses do their job, because there's things nurses can do, the nurses have to do, that I don't even like to do to myself, much less somebody else. So it is a rewarding job. There are days that it may not seem like that, but I think over time you influence people in a positive way, and you really don't realize that. And that could be something you do while you're working, or even when you're off, especially in a small community like this, because where everybody knows who you are.
Absolutely, absolutely. 78,000 miles roads in North Carolina, second only to the state of Texas in the United States.
I think that's right.
Yep, 1,600 plus or minus troopers. Need more.
Need more. Always need more.
And I think we can both say because we have ended up working where we grew up, it makes you more passionate about your job. You care more because you're helping your own community and your own county. And and Brian's the same way. We both look at being a public servant, you realize it's your calling, and you both look at your office or your school as your mission field, and we're just there to help people, and that's hard for people to see sometimes, and it gets frustrating sometimes, but that really is the heart of the matter.
And I agree with both of those commentaries. When we look at it in the positions that both you guys hold, it's really molding lives of other people. It can be at sometimes life-changing, as you mentioned, Brian. It might not be in the best situation. With Melanie, you see it, as we talked about, in the classrooms.
Right.
There's sometimes you can intervene and do things. And sadly, same with you, Brian, there's times that there's just nothing you can do.
Yeah, but you try in every situation, like I said, you always try. As I've gotten older, not that I'm old at all, I don't think, but there's been times in my life where I always looked at the glass half empty. I think as you mature and you get older, you have to look at it half full. So you have to try to find, even the worst situation that you come into, you got to find something good in it and learn from it and move on. And the thing about being from here, she will not be an educator forever. I will not work for the Highway Patrol forever. There'll be a day and a time when we retire, and the people we are dealing with now, mentoring now in a school, or stopping or encountering or mentoring as law enforcement officers, they're going to be people in our shoes later, doing, teaching our grandkids.
Yeah. You're looking at the future every day.
Right.
Yeah, literally, in the sense, especially in the sense of a classroom, because when you look at those 10 or 30 students in that class, you give it a short, trust me, from my position, I'll go ahead and say, I'm up there, so it's a short period of time, 20 years. It's like that, and all of a sudden you are dealing with those people.
Right. Yeah, I have 2 teachers on my staff that were my students. So,
and you're young.
It makes me feel old, but it also makes me feel good because I don't think they would be working at my school if I hadn't had a positive interaction with them as a teacher. So.
And what you said about how you got into this profession was because of that private interaction you had. Same thing with you, Brian.
And I can look at it rewarding. Now, I don't necessarily have my students, but I can look back. I had a count on them. I think there's like 7 or 8 now, troopers that I supervise as a sergeant or a first sergeant that have been promoted that worked for me at one point or another. Now, I'm not saying I'm the sole purpose for that promotion, but it's rewarding to me, because they'll still call me saying, hey, this is the situation I've got. What's the best way forward?
Yep. And at this time in our social network, it's good to have somebody to do that. About 15 seconds to wrap. I'll give you any last comments.
I don't know, just continue to keep us both in your prayers as, things change and during this pandemic, and we just treasure them.
Absolutely.
As always, we are here to help. Anything the Highway Patrol can do for you, you're welcome to call the office here in Clinton, 592-3141. Speak to me or another trooper. And lastly, this is not a profession where you get a pat on the back all the time. So if you do have a good encounter with a trooper, which I hope most of them are good, pick up that phone or shoot an email. there's ways to do that and,
Yeah.
and give them a pat on the back, especially during these times.
Absolutely. Or let me know and I'll tell everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week, 2:30 every Tuesday right here. And as always, stay safe, stay well, and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.